It's not going to be like the US dollar loses reserve currency overnight. It's not going to happen. However, what people are starting to now look at is alternatives. And how do I hedge against that? How do I make sure I'm not Argentina or Russia, where overnight my dollar is not worth anything? I don't want Bitcoin. Right? If things really get bad, I don't want your Bitcoin. I don't really want your gold chips. I need your food. I need your energy. I need land. I need ammunition. I need those things. Who wants your block of gold? Like, people want medicine. They want food. They want running water. They want ammunition. And I don't want to scare anybody or anything like that. But
let's move into crypto.
yeah,
Bitcoin just hit, what was it, 100?
yeah, it's over 100,000.
6,000?
Yeah.
Where's that going?
Yeah. I wish I knew exactly where it was going. One thing I will say about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, alternative currencies in general, is it goes back to this faith in the dollar. I think a lot of people are losing faith in the dollar because a lot of people have lost faith in politicians. And unfortunately, in this country, there's two things. We have fiscal policy and monetary policy that kind of rule our economy. Now, monetary policy is what we see the Fed doing, right? And monetary policy, they only have one tool. So Jerome Powell and all these guys, they sit around, they look at all the problems. They have one tool for a dual mandate. Dual mandate meaning they have to do two things. They have to keep a lid on inflation. Their numbers about 2 to 3%. We know we're like at 7, 8% before, but that's not the real numbers. If you look at housing and all those things, like 12, 13%. And they need to maintain full unemployment. So they want to have unemployment somewhere around 3.5%, 4%. So that's two pretty big tasks, right? Control inflation and make sure people have jobs. Oh, and you got one tool. It's monetary policy, meaning interest rates. That's all you can do to control this. So no matter what they see, that's all they can do. And so what the Fed tries to do is control the economy by either lowering interest rates or raising interest rates. So when they raise interest rates, they're trying to slow the economy down. Why? Well, makes sense. If you're going to go and buy a house, well, that house payment today is going to cost you a lot more. A lot of people have credit card debt. So your credit card interest payments this month or this year might be $500, where 3 years ago, they were only $200. So when interest rates go up, it stymies the economy. There's more money that has to go to debt service than can go out to buy goods and services. And that's why the economy slows down. And that's why inflation comes down. The opposite is when they see things, and right now they're in a period of lowering interest rates, which is relatively controversial because when you look at the economy, it's actually doing pretty well. And so people are wondering, like, why are they lowering interest rates? So when they lower interest rates, the idea is, well, what we're going to do is give more stimulus into the economy. So the opposite, if home prices are lower now, right? Because of the fact that their payment is lower, more money to the economy. Less money is going to pay off your student loan, or assuming you still have student loans, or your credit card debt, so more money goes into the economy. So that's their only tool. The problem is, though, that the Fed can only control the overnight lending rate, which is short-term interest rates. So we've seen the Fed cut rates twice now, but actually long-term rates have gone up. And so like the 10-year treasury actually controls the 30-year mortgage. So mortgage rates were in the 6s. Now they're back above 7%. So people are kind of scratching their head because at the end of the day, no matter what they do, it's the free world market economy that's going to dictate what they believe in. People do not believe that they're going to cut interest rates much more. They don't believe that the economy is going to go to a point where it dictates rates going lower. And so that's not really working. And so I'm getting to your question about Bitcoin, but then that relies on the bigger lever to move the economy, and that's fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is things like tax cuts. It's things like changing regulation. It's everything else except for monetary policy, which I would argue is the more important thing, right? I don't want to build a business and have to pay 40 or 50% when I sell it in taxes to the government who's not efficient with it. I don't want to pay the highest tax rates in the country. I don't want to have ridiculous regulation that's not helping anybody, and it's causing us to hire 22 attorneys every single year. Those are the things that we're hoping that we've had no fiscal policy for the last 5, 6 years because everybody's locked up, nothing's changing, so we're relying on the Fed to move everything. So everyone's blaming the Fed for everything, and meanwhile, it's really Congress that can't decide on anything that's going to actually help the economy. And so what I'm saying here is all these things, the ability for Congress to act on fiscal policy, for us to have smart monetary policy, that dictates what's going to happen with the dollar. And unless people feel like there's some security and stability around the U.S. economy, there's not going to be security and stability around the U.S. dollar. And so what people start saying then is, well, what can we believe in? What currency? Now, it's not going to be like the US dollar loses reserve currency overnight. It's not going to happen. However, what people are starting to now look at is alternatives. And how do I hedge against that? How do I make sure I'm not Argentina or Russia, where overnight my dollar is not worth anything? So they're looking at things like Bitcoin as a hedge to that. And, Bitcoin obviously kind of, it's an unscrewable ledger. There's a finite amount of supply. In terms of using it as a currency, it's not going to happen. It's not efficient enough to happen, but people are using it as a store of value. Arguably, when things really go bad, I don't know that it's going to be the best store of value. I think I'd probably rather have land and maybe even gold in that sense, but they're using it as a store of value and also a hedge. Now, again, remember I told you narrative is super important though. So why I talked about, investing in psychedelics makes more sense now than if the Harris administration were to get into there. All these things are based off of narrative. So stocks need a catalyst and they need a story to support it. So I think this new incoming administration really kind of lit a fire under crypto. Why? Because you have Doge. Why did everyone get excited? Doge. It was Dogecoin that Elon Musk took from a fraction of a penny to 40 cents. He's obviously pro crypto. You've seen Trump out at some of the crypto conventions out there. So this administration seems pretty crypto friendly. What does that mean? I don't know. However, there's a narrative there for people to speculate and bet on it more. And you're starting to see other countries adopt it. Maybe does it become, if they start talking about, hey, we need to have a certain amount of crypto to kind of secure the dollar. I mean, you're going to see, or Bitcoin, you're going to see things absolutely rally. So it goes back to, we don't know enough about it yet, but should you have a small amount of money invested in these things? More than likely you should. Just don't go all in on it, because if it doesn't happen, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But I think there's enough now with this new, if this administration didn't get in, I think I would say don't touch it. But I think there's enough out there to where we could hear something kind of shocking that gets it to skyrocket. So I think having a little bit of an allocation to it's pretty good.
What about precious metals?
Yeah.
I mean, gold it's close to $3,000 an ounce now, correct?
Yeah.
It really jumped.
Yeah, so gold, it's all the same
also
reason.
because of fear of the dollar?
It's exactly what it is. So when you look at, there's a few, what I would say, old school hedges against the dollar. Gold's probably one of the oldest, right? We used to be on the gold standard, which means we had to have a certain amount of gold in supply for every dollar. And then we got off the gold standard because we wanted to be able to create the deficits that we had without any accountability. And that was probably one of the worst things that could have happened to the US dollar. But gold is one of those things. Land is one of those things. Oil. What they say is if you drop it on your foot and it hurts, that's probably one of the things that you want to have to hedge against the dollar. Now, Bitcoin obviously isn't that, but I guess they're saying that that's kind of the new cyber hedge against that. But I think a little bit of gold is fine. But, let me tell you my honest opinion about all this stuff, right? A lot of people will say stocks are also a good hedge against inflation. Why? Well, we just went through a good period of inflation. Stocks did really well. Why? Well, let's look at Procter & Gamble, who makes a lot of food and diapers and all this stuff, things that we all need to buy. So what did they do? Inflation came, they increased prices, which, hey, you still need to eat and you still need to put diapers on your kid. They did something called shrinkflation, which they just gave you less cereal in the box, but you paid the same price. So companies will not just sit back and not be profitable. They will pass along ways to be profitable to the companies. So stocks do tend to be a good hedge against inflation. But here's the way I look at it. Over the long run, what are we really trying? So you buy stocks, what are you trying to hedge against? A hedge in general is against catastrophe, right? So when you think about hedges like the dollar crashing and World War III, I would argue if some of the worst case scenarios that you've talked about on your show, we've talked about before, actually come to play, you're going to have a lot bigger worries about than your stock portfolio. So we've talked about this before, I'm kind of all in on stocks and small businesses, and I've got a little bit of crypto, but I tend to invest in businesses and American entrepreneurs because I think American entrepreneurs are always going to find a way to make money, right? And it's proven itself. Even the S&P 500, and we're always talking it down. Last time I was on your show almost 2 years ago, if you're not going to do anything, buy the S&P 500. It's up 40-something% versus trying to be all over the place. Buy the S&P 500. But what I would say is if you're really worried about the proverbial shit hitting the fan, I like things like farmland. I like things like ammunition. I like things like weapons. I like things where at the end of the day, if things really get that bad, there's been some shows on Netflix like, who wants your block of gold? Like, people want medicine, they want food, they want running water, they want ammunition. And I don't want to scare anybody or anything like that. But in terms of the hedges that I advise people against, the hedges that I have, it's more leaning towards that. Like, I don't want Bitcoin. Right? If things really get bad, I don't want your Bitcoin. I don't really want your gold chips. I need your food. I need your energy. I need land. I need ammunition. I need those things. And it might be kind of a morbid or scary way to think about it. But at the end of the day, it's either stocks and companies, and America is always going to find a way. It always has to continue to do better and do well and prosper. And real estate, I love. Or things are going to go really bad. And the alternative probably doesn't look like you're going to be protected by Bitcoin. That's just my view.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.